Okay, day 2, Erica Kirk and Donald Trump Jr. are both in the courtroom. So at the beginning of the preliminary hearing, the prosecution moves to resubmit the elusive edited video to the court and the media. The only thing the judge granted the defense yesterday. So basically what the prosecution did is they could not submit the evidence yesterday because it was edited. They argue for a while that the video they submitted is blurry, and it is. It's awful. And that they should be able to include the edited version so they can zoom in and prove that it might be Tyler Robinson. The footage is of Tyler Robinson getting to the campus at 8:30 a.m. and leaving at 9:25 a.m. They say he visited the courtyard, but no video was provided of the courtyard visit. He's wearing maroon and carrying a blue backpack. They list out all the places he went on and off campus. Chick-fil-A, the woods, where he comes back without a backpack. 11 a.m. he leaves campus the second time. There's a third return they believe is Tyler Robinson, but he's wearing different clothes with the same shoes. That's their argument. It's the same shoes. And now he's limping. Prosecution admits they don't have footage of the actual shot being taken. And I quote, what they assume is the shot being fired. So the video that they brought yesterday was 12.1, the edited video. So today they brought 12.3, the unedited video. And it's the unedited version of 12.1. Here's the clip of Tyler allegedly walking on the roof at 12:15 and going over the railing to get to the Losi roof.
This is an image looking across the parking lot to the Losi building, and Mr. Robinson is appearing on the exterior staircase, which gives access to the Losi building roof and the area where the railing was. The individual can be seen moving under the notations that are on the video.
You're saying he's up here?
And then they state that he's laying prone on the top of the Losi building. Then they go back to the portion of the video where Tyler's laying prone on the roof. The defense questions to point out that Tyler was only in the prone position for 15 to 30 seconds. So once he's prone, he only had 15 to 30 seconds to take the shot. Then the well-known clip of him jumping off and carrying the towel, bag, or whatever it is, plays. Also, it's very far out. They then show a clip of him walking towards the wooded area off of Campus Drive. Then they show a nighttime video at 6:36 p.m. It's Tyler Robinson's car attempting to turn onto Campus Drive. The vehicle goes straight instead. I'm sure they'll get into like blinkers and stuff later because I didn't see a blinker, but who knows. They believe it was Tyler Robinson because a police officer doing security stopped the vehicle later at 12:30 a.m. So the witness says the other bullet found was from a police officer clearing his gun, but has no idea when it was accounted for or what type of bullet it was. It was not taken into evidence or considered evidence. The defense brings up a video that circulated online of two young guys who recorded the roof, and there's a person in the roof, and if you've not seen that video, go look it up. She asked the witness if they interviewed those gentlemen or if those gentlemen ever gave them a description of what they saw, and the answer was no. Also, when did he have time to put the gun together? In all the video evidence I've seen so far, I see him like rolling over him, this little blob like rolling over the edge, but they never show a portion of time in these video clips where he would have had time to put the gun together. So I'm assuming they're gonna say like the gun was in his pants, because I think that's the narrative. I'm not sure at this point, but I will say this. I will die laughing if this goes to trial and they try to say that he had the gun in his pants. Like, we're going to see a whole scene where some guy is shoving a gun in his pants in the courtroom and they're going to be screaming, if the gun doesn't fit, you must acquit. Like, there's no point where they show him assembling the gun. So that's what I'm assuming this is going to come down to. The defense brings up the nobles. Okay, let's talk about the nobles, which are the people who have the video cam footage of like the potato car pulling up that we discussed yesterday. In the report, the nobles stated that the driver was bald and there were 3 other people in the vehicle. Defense also asks if the canine sniffed the area that Charlie Kirk was shot. The answer was no. Oh, and then she brings up the fact that they paved over the crime scene, but this specific witness couldn't speak to that. This witness is the lead investigator. So, like, I really feel like he should have way more answers than he's giving. The defense then spends a lot of time arguing against a mystery document from a pastor and friend who talks about TPUSA, IRS, taxes, religious beliefs, foreign policy, and more. The defense says this is irrelevant and calls it a victim targeting penalty enhancement. That is someone's opinion that Charlie Kirk was targeted for his religious, political beliefs and speaks to Tyler Robinson's state of mind. The prosecution says it speaks to motive. The prosecution then reads from the unadmitted document and defense goes off with an objection that is sustained. The defense asks the judge to admonish the prosecutor. So this did seem like a shady tactic from the prosecution. Then the judge basically tells the prosecutor, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Then the media comes back in again, basically begging for this portion of the trial not to be closed. The media actually brings up a really good point that just because something ultimately doesn't get admitted doesn't mean the public shouldn't see it. They basically argue that just because something gets seen by the public, that we're smart enough to determine that if it's not admitted, then we can determine ourselves whether that was a reasonable call or not. So that it's still our right to see what's being presented, whether it's brought into the case or not. In an amazing turn of events, the judge overrules himself, and the judge decides to keep the hearing open. The exhibit gets provisionally admitted, and they just decide they'll come back to it later. Then, the world's hottest judge shows not only is he handsome, not only is he smart, but he is also funny.
All right, let us proceed. Well, let us proceed to lunch because
We finally have an official description. I don't know if this is new news, but to me it's new news. So the official description of the gun, a Mauser 98 rifle, 30-06 barrel with bolt action. Whatever that means. At some point it gets brought up that there is a lot of Lance Twiggs DNA. And later in the court case, it gets very hairy on those numbers. There's so many different items. Sometimes they're not clarifying what the items are as far as I can tell from what I'm hearing. So there's a certain portion of the hearing where it sounds like it's all of Lance Twiggs' DNA and like 11% Tyler Robinson's. But then the prosecution comes back and says, no, on this item it was 95% and barely any of Lance Twiggs. So I don't actually know, but what I do know is the threshold is 20%. 20% DNA threshold. I did figure that part out. The defense brings in a witness, an examiner for the FBI. And this is where we get into mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA. Apparently, what we're dealing with here in the preliminary is not mitochondrial. It is nuclear, and there's clearly a difference. Because the defense goes at this chick hard, even though the defense brought her here. He even goes as far as to try and discredit her in their reporting, stating that back in 2004, they weren't even accredited. All of the testing to validate this type of DNA testing was done by people with vested interest. This is what he's throwing out, the defense attorney. They have samples from the stair rail, the Losi building, the screwdriver, and the gun. I know that his point was that there's a difference between the two types of DNA, and hers is less reliable. What I thought was really interesting is he definitely comes at her at one point about how she changed her report from three sample subjects down to 2. Okay, this part was rough to watch, but I do recommend, like, if you have any interest in the DNA portion whatsoever, going back and watching the footage, because it is complicated, and I'm doing my best to explain it. And then the prosecution comes back, brings up the towel and the screwdriver, stops mid-sentence, and just was like, I'm just gonna wrap up. We can handle this another time. I'll bring you part 3 tomorrow. I'll be watching all of the hours for you and compacting it as much as I can and explaining it as best as I can. Mwah. I just want to shout out Valhalla because that's whose live I'm watching. And he did make a really good point about body language. While they are questioning the DNA analyst, every time she responds to the defense attorney, she faces the judge and speaks. But every time she's talking to every time she's talking to the prosecutor, she addresses him directly.